Hello again, it's me. So I really recommend you make a chart similar to this and take notes on these things so that way you have it, whereas you go through your book, have like a similar chart to this. This just kind of has some of the essential things that you do need to know about these different biomolecules, sometimes also called macromolecules, organic molecules. I'm going to make a video for each one of them. So I just wanted to put this up there. You can feel free to pause and write something or type something for yourself. I'm going to make a video for each one, and I'm going to try to keep them short and simple and to the point so that way you can see it, get it, hear it from me aside from just reading it in a book. And I'll have posted, I think I posted it under the introductory video, just a set of links to other videos that can talk to you about the subjects that are going to be in this playlist that I think you will find valuable, that might say something much better than I could. So I won't keep talking about nothing. I'll start talking about carbohydrates. So the word carbohydrate, let's just even look at that. You can see the word carbon almost in there. Hydrate, when you think of hydrate, I think of like water. So carbohydrates are literally made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Remember, water is H2O. And that's even how, a spoiler alert, the formula for carbohydrates goes. There's usually 1 carbon to every 2 hydrogen to every 1 oxygen. So it's something like CH2O, and that's where the name comes from, carbohydrate, neat. So there's 3 groups. Monosaccharides, those are also called simple sugars. Mono means 1, and this saccharide, it means like sugar. Disaccharide, 2 sugars, 2 of these little building blocks put together, and poly means many sugars put together. And remember, think about all the different prefixes and suffixes that you kind of keep hearing over and over again. You'll see them again pop up. So let's look at some basic carbohydrates and what they look like. So a monosaccharide is the building block of a carbohydrate. They are simple sugars. Here's one right here. The most common simple sugar, the one that you've heard of probably, is glucose. So they can't be broken down into any simpler carbohydrate. That's the simplest building block. If we break that down even more, then we don't have a carb anymore. We have something else. Sorry. So those are glucose. That's what plants make during photosynthesis. Fructose, which you might think of as fruit sugar. Galactose or lactose. Those are milk sugars. Ribose and deoxyribose. We're going to come back to those when we talk about DNA and RNA. But these are sugars. Those are monosaccharides, the basic building blocks. Those provide your body with energy. I always think of giving a little kid some sugar and then they start going hyper. Sugars provide energy. Next, we come to disaccharides and disaccharide examples. Those are 2 monosaccharides. So those are 2 simple sugars put together. So glucose and fructose together form sucrose. That's the sugar you get in the bag. That's the white sugar that you use to bake things with. That's the sugar in a lot of our foods. And that's formed by something called a dehydration reaction. So remember, let's think about what something that's dehydrated is like. It's like dry. There's no water. So what happens is those 2 simple sugars come together. They form a bond. And when the bond is formed, it kicks out some molecules. And the molecules that it happens to kick out are 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, H2O. That's why we call that a dehydration reaction. And galactose and glucose form lactose. That's milk sugar. So if you are lactose intolerant, it means you can't digest milk sugar. Your body cannot break down lactose into its components, and then you feel kind of yucky. So here are disaccharides, and here's that dehydration reaction that I mentioned. So here we have 2 simple sugars. Here we have a 6 carbon and a 5 carbon sugar. I know because I can count the little points or count the carbons that are here. Here are 6, here are 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, that's not important. This is how we make sucrose. So these are going to bond together. So what happens after this arrow, they bond together with this oxygen. the carbon will kind of connect here, and that's where the bond will be. And look at what we've taken out, 2 H's and an O, H2O, that's water. So what about polysaccharides? Poly means many, many sugars. So a polysaccharide are many simple sugars joined together. They're kind of, they look like they're holding hands. That's what I always think of. And they can make these long chains that we would call complex carbohydrates. In this picture here, for example, that's starch. You can also have something like cellulose. That's what makes up plant cell walls. It's very similar in structure to starch, but not exactly. We can digest starch, but we can't digest cellulose. We don't have the enzymes that can digest that. So a polysaccharide or a complex carbohydrate is just a bunch of these monosaccharides joined together. And those make things, like I said, starch, which you find in potatoes and bread and crackers. Now, when we digest things, I know you think that's some of my favorite part now of eating, digesting, okay, right? So what that just means is we break the bond that's in between those simple sugars. So in a disaccharide, to digest it, boop, we break this little bond and we end up with 2 monosaccharides. What do we have to add to digest things? What's something in our mouth? Water, enzymes, but also like they can break down in water. If we have a polysaccharide like starch, eventually all those bonds will get broken and we'll end up with a bunch of monosaccharides that our body can use to process to make energy. So that's spoilers for the next video. That's all I want to talk to you about carbs. Just kind of going back to this. The elements we talked about, that C, H, and O. Examples, we have monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Examples of monosaccharides are glucose, for example. A disaccharide would be sucrose or lactose. A polysaccharide could be starch or cellulose. The functions, I know I didn't write it out, but a function would be they give us energy. They provide quick energy if they're a sugar, or if they're in that long chain that needs to be digested. They can provide, they'll provide energy to us once they're broken down. And the monomer of carbs are simple sugars or monosaccharides. So I hope that helps as a summary, and we'll see you for lipids.